What do you do when no one else will stand? When, even though the strong step back and God calls you to step forward? What do you do? One stone, one God, one stand. The untold power behind David's faith-filled fight. What do you do when you have to stand alone? When you see people in front of you that you know are strong. You say, how could I be standing by myself here? But I know these people. These people are strong. They're warriors. Well, that's where the rest of the story comes in. Welcome to the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn, where biblical truth comes alive through original languages, Hebraic context, and real-life application. Today's episode isn't just about slingshots and stories. It's about you. It's about your fear. And it's about your faith. And it's about your moment to stand when no one else will stand. We're entering one of the most defining scenes in Scripture. A valley where giants roar. Armies tremble. And a lone shepherd boy steps forward in covenant confidence. David didn't win because he was brave. He won because he remembered who his God was and is, and he trusted him completely. That's what this episode is all about. Finding the courage to trust God when everyone else bows to fear. So, if you're tired of being silent, if you're tired of being sidelined, if you're tired of being scared, this one's for you. Let's pick up the stone and let's walk into this valley together. Remember, go to the Rumble channel, click on follow and the little bell, and send me an email at smgreener@gmail.com. It's on the bottom and top there, I think. Very important that you sign up with Rumble. Very, very important. And then if you'll do that, if you'll go to Rumble, do it right down, maybe write it down, or maybe you have a laptop and a phone. Maybe on one you can do that. I don't know. And especially if you're driving, don't worry about any of this. But go to the Rumble channel, True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn. You'll see two there that belong to me, the Ninja Pastor and True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn. Join up under that one, the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn. Go to the Rumble channel, click on follow, click on the little bell, send me an email at smgreener@gmail.com, letting me know that you followed me, True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn, that channel, and I will send you a free study guide to this episode. And I will even include the 2 poems that I will recite in a little bit. How about that? Maybe you might say, well, dude, you're going to have to sweeten the deal a little bit, but that's all I got. So again, for those of you who are joining us from all the different streaming platforms, welcome to X, welcome to Facebook, welcome to LinkedIn, failed again, welcome to Instagram, or Quora. Follow me on Quora. Follow me on all of those places, if you will. If you want, you don't have to. But it's especially important wherever you're listening to click on that thumbs up and click on follow or subscribe. And maybe, not for nothing, you could share it with someone. So for those of you just tuning in, welcome to True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn, where in-depth biblical teaching meets the richness of original languages and cultural context, bringing the truth of Scripture to real people for real life every single episode. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up and for subscribing. Now, let me say this. There's another thing about Rumble that's going to be very important. I am going to do, once a week, I'm adding a broadcast, not a super long one, but I'm adding a broadcast only and exclusively on Rumble. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to start this week only and exclusively on Rumble. So if that's of interest to you, make sure you subscribe or hit the follow. I think they call it follow on Rumble. And we have a lot more freedom there. We can say what we want to say, how we want to say it. And we don't run the risk of just getting deplatformed for no reason at all, just because we say the name of Christ. And we talk about God and the Bible. So, yeah, that's that. Thank you to all of you listening in chat on the YouTube channel. Thank you also for those listening on Rumble right now. And I see there's already 28 of you listening right now on Rumble. I can't see the chat there just yet. I can see it afterward, but I'm going to figure out a way to put the chats in right next to each other, the Rumble and the YouTube. So I'll figure that out. We'll get it done. So today we step into a valley where fear reigned, but faith roared louder. Now we're talking about David. Not David the king, not yet. Not David the warrior with blood on his hands, not yet. No, we're talking about David the shepherd. We're talking about David the worshiper. We're talking about David the musician. David the one who picked smooth stones from a stream, and with faith alone stood where no one else would. Now, in order to understand this, we have to go back to, by the way, how's the sound? If one of you in chat will let me know that. Let's go back to 1 Samuel 17, and there's passion. This passage is often, very often. Hey there, Carol R. So good to see you. Thank you so much for joining. What a privilege to have you listen. All of you listening. What a privilege. Love you all. So this usually gets flattened into a children's story, right? 1 Samuel 17. It gets flattened onto a flannel graph and it gets put up on the thing. And here's what happened, boys and girls. And, and I get that. 100%. By the way, I have, you have to thank for this. Hey, Amanda, hello here. Sound tech here, rocking. Awesome. That sounds good. Thank you very much, Miss Amanda. Also, by the way, if Martin joins us, just to let you know, it's Martin's birthday. And so happy birthday to Martin. God bless you, brother. We love you. We are pulling for you. This whole series, the Cain and Abel series, because really this is tied into that. And I just talked about Nephilim. What are the Nephilim? Goliath, giants, and the truth. That's all free, by the way, on either the Rumble or the YouTube channel. Now, I'm premium on both of those because I need to be, and for me, it's a great benefit. But I think it's $5 on Rumble. If you sign up under Rumble, mention me. Tell them you heard about it. If you sign up for that, it's free to listen on Rumble. It's free, but it's just you get ad free and you get some other benefits to do that thing. And I think it's a monthly thing of $5. They don't give me anything for that. I'm just saying. So if you see that, don't go, oh man, they want my credit card. No, you can do it totally for free. Just there's not as much censorship. There's none that I have found, and I'm glad of that. So, look, if you were a person that grew up in church and you happen to be taught this story, it would be understandable that you have memories of, the Sunday school teacher put the little flannel graph and then had the little bitty sling, and because you can only make those flannel graphs so big. And I used to love those. I thought they were cool. And, obviously technology now, but the flannel graph, my sister-in-law, Lynette, they do a shawl ministry. You know what a shawl is? You put it over your shoulders and kind of around your arms. It's a female thing. And it was amazing. Robert Ben David, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us again. that ministry is really old school, but I got to tell you, it's very touching. And she made me one. She made a little bit bigger one for me, like an actual Afghan. But they do them, and they pray. They pray as they're making them. The ladies do. I think that's a beautiful thing. So that's old school. Flannel graph is old school, but maybe, nowadays, maybe it isn't all about how flashy it is, but how sincere it is. Who knows? Who knows? That's for another story. But look, this isn't any bedtime tale here, right? This is covenant. This is the very heart of what it means to trust Adonai-Tzva'ot, the Lord of heaven's armies. David was from Bethlehem, by the way. Bethlehem, house of bread. Literally, in Hebrew, means house of bread. Bethlehem. But from this house was really a house of provision. Came more than just food, right? Bethlehem. Think about it. That's just incredible. The house of provision, right? Bread was life. If you didn't have bread, you didn't have life. And from this house of provision came more than just food, it came faith. Judah's tribe bore the promise of royalty, and hidden in its hills, God shaped the heart of a king, not in palaces. So a lot of times we think, well, God's not promoting me. Look, if you could see how tiny this studio is. This is a bedroom, a very small bedroom with so much stuff in it you just can't imagine. There's so much stuff. I'm working through it, but slow going. And I need to make it nicer and, a nicer work environment because I'm in here a lot. But look what's happening here, right? Look what's happening here. This is going out potentially all over the world. Well, I'm just a relatively regular dude. I'm certainly no David. Those of you who know me well personally know I've got mountains of hurts, habits, hang-ups, and skeletons. If I keep talking, a whole femur might fly out of my mouth. I am an incredibly imperfect man. That said, David was too. God, this is a bone of contention among a lot of people, but I was a wildlife photographer till I sold all my stuff, and for multiple reasons, but one of it is to help pay for all this stuff. This stuff isn't cheap. If you knew what this cost, just this thing, who knew? I just thought you put a phone up and you just talk, but I did that for a few times. People are like, I don't think so, buddy. And so lights, there's all kinds of lights, and you'd think I'd look better, right? Well, I don't wear the makeup yet. So anyway, my point in that is that you may think that you say, well, what's my ministry? I really want a ministry. I really want, you almost think, ooh, you know what? Miss Colleen had a great idea. You can place them on your lap while you pray too. Prayer blanket. Oh, I like that. That's really, really good. Excellent. Kudos to you. I will make dinner after I leave this place, and it will be good. I've prepared it all. I'm trying this for the first time. Who knows? Yeah, we might be going to do takeout. Oh, thank you. You're very kind. Very kind. So you might think because, hey, I'm not in this palatial situation, right? I'm not in a fancy thing. And I remember when protecting people through Executive Protection Team and others, very often I was protecting billionaires, really, really powerful people. And what's crazy is they live a very different life, right? And it's not, I used to tell my people at Executive Protection Team, I used to say, look, you've got to understand this is not your life. Don't get it twisted. This palatial living, these fancy jets, all of these fancy things, this ain't you. You don't own a bit of it. You don't own a bit of it. So don't get it twisted. Stay in your lane. Do what you come here to do. Do what you've come here to do, and do it without fail. Do it with a high level of excellence. So, but you might think, well, I'm not in this kind of thing, right? And I always liken this to the people at church that pick up the chairs at the end of church of like, we're building a new building. We had to leave the other building, and we're building a building, bought land, building a building. It's lovely. It's going to be really, really nice. Nothing palatial because we're low budget, but it's going to be our own, and it'll be God's, and it'll be consecrated to his service. That said, Grace Community Topsail and Pastor Steve Marshall and brother Pastor Kyle, pastor and associate pastor, and lovely people. The people there are amazing. If you're ever in the Wilmington, North Carolina, Surf City, any of those places, you gotta come there. It's Sunday at 10 a.m. Wonderful people. So anyway, we're meeting in this school, and it's like a combination room, super loud. And I took these out so I could show you. These little things enable me to hear. Well, what's crazy is, like, those are like computers. I don't know if you could see how small they were. So when I'm in church in this particular place, there's no sound deadening. There's none of that. And so I can't hear. I just can't hear. And the chairs are those little foldy chairs. They're about this big. I'm big. I'm a big fella. They're lots bigger than me, but I'm a big fella. So I don't fit, and it's hard to sit up in those chairs. I'm all the time trying to slide out of them. And it's really loud in there. And the hearing aids help a little bit because they don't just amplify the sound. They clarify the sound. Anyway, every little sound in there, every chair squeaking, and every little child, talking to their mama or whatever the case may be, I hear it, especially if it's behind me, I hear it more than anything else. So I can't really make out what Steve is saying, Pastor Steve. That whole big diatribe to say this. You might think, right? You might think that if you're toiling away in that situation, let's say your volunteer task is, I'll just say it, cleaning the restrooms. Listen, there's nothing that will turn a family off from coming to your church if when they arrive and you've shaken their hands and greeted them great, you've done a great job. You've really loved on them, but they go to the restroom in your church and it's all full of spider webs and cobwebs, and there's all kind of dirt, and the paper towels are overflowing, the toilets are dirty. Yeah, everything's dirty, it stinks, No, they won't be back. They'll have a conversation on the way home, go a little bit like this. I really like those people in the church. Man, the preaching was really good, and I really could identify with the music. But did your bathroom stink? Yeah, did you have spiders up in there? Yeah. Well, let's keep looking on our church hunt. That's how it goes. I'm telling you. They're not going to tell you that, but that's the truth of it. So cleaning those bathrooms, doing a great job, is important. And then sweeping and setting up the chairs, coming early and, setting up those chairs. My lands, that's a lot of work. Setting up 250, 350 chairs, that's a lot of work. And then guess what? If you set them up, you got to take them down. There's just so much. There's so much involved. The musicians have to bring every piece of musical equipment they have. They just have to. That's how it is. And there's no choice in the matter. So you're performing in a place where little kids do I think it's an elementary school, South Topsail Elementary, North Topsail, I can't remember. Anyway, Topsail Elementary, whatever it is. It's on Hoover Road. So, you're singing your guts out, you're preaching your guts out, you're serving your guts out, but you're looking around and you're like, man, oh man, this is where little kids, during the week are eating their lunch, playing gym, doing their little plays. And you might think that. But the reality is it doesn't have to be a palace to be God's thing. And so I want to tie this in really quickly, and then I'll move on because this is not a very long teaching. You may have heard, right? I was a wildlife photographer. a nature photographer, and I love it. And I loved it. And if you're on YouTube, you can go to, there's a link if you go to the show description, not this episode description, but the actual show description. There's a link there that has literally 1/1000th of my photography. And so I loved to do it. And there were times where the opportunity I had to go out into the wilderness and do photography was on a Sunday. And that's quite a conundrum for a lot of people because, you know, they, oh, Dr. Shawn, he's going out and shooting pictures. What they don't know is I'm doing church 3, 4, 5 times a week. They don't know that. They don't consider that. Not to make an excuse, but there's reasons. There's things behind it. But I used to refer to the great outdoors as my sanctuary. It was a sanctuary. And because I was still am, so into wildlife and nature and all of those things, I'll tell you what, it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm not saying you do that every Sunday. I'm just saying. So juxtapose that to David. Not King David, not warrior David, shepherd boy David. Playing his little harp out in the fields, keeping watch over the sheep, looking out for lions and whatever all else. He's out there by himself. That's not palaces. Judah's tribe bore the promise of royalty, and hidden in its hills, God shaped the heart of a king, not in palaces, but among sheep, stinky, smelly sheep. And his older brothers followed Saul, the people's king, the tall one, the warrior they chose. But when a giant stepped onto the battlefield, when he was clothed in bronze, Israel cowered, including Saul. So I started to tell you before, and I'll finish this. This whole thing has come about because of Dennis. Dennis asked, my buddy Dennis asked a series of questions, and this is one of them. I'm answering maybe more than one of them, but he won't be able to listen to this for quite some time because he's on that big ride. I think it's the Face of America. I can't remember what it's called, but they start at Arlington National Cemetery. It's this weekend. They're doing 100 and something miles in 2 days. So I really wanted to do it, but anyway. So when this giant, Goliath, when he stepped onto the battlefield, and he had all this bronze on that normal, he had multiple men that had to lift it and to carry it. Israel cowered, including Saul. Why? Because they saw the size of the problem. But David didn't. He remembered the size of God's covenant. And look, this is crucial. David doesn't fight for Israel because he's brave. He fights because he's convinced that God keeps his word. He doesn't fight because he's full of courage. He fights because he's convinced that God keeps his promises and that he wouldn't fail him. You see, Hebrew faith is not abstract belief. It's a relational trust rooted in action. And David acts in trust. He acts in trust. The verb, the action of acting in trust, not just belief. So let's dig into the Hebrew text. In 1 Samuel 17:45, David says this. And this he's saying to Goliath. I think at the end he should have said, in your face. A stone fixing to hit you in your face. But, I mean, he was better than me. I probably wouldn't have. Knowing me, I would have just flung the thing and beamed him in the noggin, in the melon. I'd have just not said anything. I'd have gone stealth on it from behind some. Poof. Hey, why's I got a headache? Oh, I'm falling. Poof. They say he was so big when he walked, the ground shook. So David says this, you come against me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come against you in the name of Adonai-Tzva'ot, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have challenged. So he put out a challenge. He said, you go ahead. You send your army against me. Go ahead. I'll take you all down. They all cowered. Every one of them cowered. David, he's stuck at home. No, you can't go fight. You can't go fight. You're not a warrior. You're a little boy. You're just a little shepherd boy. You had no training. Listen, that phrase, Adonai-Tzva'ot, it's very powerful. It's not just God of Israel. It's commander of angelic hosts. Adonai-Tzva'ot. It's not just God of Israel. It's the commander of angelic hosts. David isn't just seeing an earthly battle here. He's invoking the heavenly realm. His confidence isn't in technique. Although look, you can't make an argument that you don't want to get in a sling fight with some dude that kills lions and bears and all kind of other stuff. You don't want to get in that fight. Not with this dude. He may be little, but no, you don't want to get in a fight. So we could say, well, he's super skilled at that. No. David is invoking an earthly battle, but he's invoking a heavenly realm. His confidence doesn't stem from how many things he was able to successfully hit in practice with his sling. No, it is in the God who fights unseen battles. Now I want you to picture this. David walks to the stream and he picks 5 smooth stones. Why smooth? Right? He goes to the stream. Before all this happens, he goes to the stream and he picks 5 smooth stones. Have you ever thought about why? Why smooth stones? Because this is free of charge, no cost or obligation to you, because smooth stones fly straight. Smooth stones fly straight. The shepherd knows his craft, but he trusts his covenant partner more than he trusts his aim. Every warrior in Saul's great army had a sword. But no one had David's heart. No one. And now here he stands before Goliath, and here's the clincher. 1 Samuel 17:47. All this assembly will know that Adonai does not save by sword or spear, for the battle belongs to Adonai, and he will give you into our hands. Is that right? Look, that's not bravado. That's faith rooted in character. God's character. Now let's go a little deeper. This isn't about David's courage. It's about covenant memory. David remembers what all those other people forgot. And I'm not saying they weren't people of faith. I'm not saying that these people all around lined up praying, doing all the Hebrew prayers and remembering all the victories and all of these things. I'm not saying that they weren't people of faith. They were certainly great warriors, and they were certainly people of faith, the majority of them. But guess what happens? They forgot what David remembered. God promised to defend his people. And if you're one of his people, he promises to defend you. And when fear made everyone forget in the midst of this great adversary, David remembered. Dr. Michael Heiser reminds us that ancient Near Eastern battles, they weren't just tribal warfare. They were cosmic conflicts between spiritual authorities. If you remember, what are the Nephilim, Goliath, giants, and the truth? It's a free episode wherever you're listening on Rumble or on YouTube, True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn. Wherever you're listening, it's free. It was the last episode I did. What are the Nephilim, Goliath, giants, and the truth? You're going to hear things that are going to blow your mind. Right? You're going to hear things that are just blow your mind. There's a lot of thought that maybe Goliath was Nephilim. And I explain what Nephilim actually are and all that. So Goliath wasn't just a big man. Certainly he was huge. They say 9 feet. He was massive. He was a representative of chaos. He was a representative of utter and complete chaos. Don't worry, just alarm. It's an alarm saying, hey, your blood sugar, pay you some mind on your blood sugar. I already did. It'll be fine. Look, Goliath represented chaos and defiance against God. What is shalom? It's the absence of chaos. It's a peace that says there cannot be chaos. And here Goliath was a representative of chaos and defiance against God. David is a symbolic reversal. One man, young boy that he was, in the name of Yahweh, restores order and righteousness through covenant obedience. Look, my buddy Dennis, he asked me about the helmet in stone. He wanted to know about, well, how did he hit him in the forehead, and what about that helmet? Like, how did that happen? Like, I thought a helmet would cover and all that stuff. So this was one of the 954 questions that he asked, literally in about 36 seconds. And so that's why this became a series, a podcast series, because Dennis asked all these great questions. I love all your questions. Listen, text me if you know my number. If you email me, smgreener@gmail.com. Put in the comments. I will answer them. I will get a hold of you. I will answer them. The reason why the comments are so important, it's just so important. And the reason why it is because YouTube and Rumble work off of algorithm. And they will not show what you do to more people unless more people want to see what you do. I know that's a conundrum, but it's true. And so my point is that's why following and subscribing and clicking on the thumbs up and doing the, sharing and putting the comments in, engagement. That's what they call engagement. So do it there, but then also email me, smgreener@gmail.com. By the way, you might be wondering, what is that crazy looking box of like white and it's the box underneath, if you're watching the video, underneath the thumbnail of Goliath and little tiny, great big Goliath cackling and little tiny David. So that thing if you put your phone up to that or your tablet or whatever, and in the camera function, a link will pop up. Click on that link. That'll take you to mdivs.edu. So when I went, it was Master's Divinity School, and then when I got my Master's, it was Master's Graduate School of Divinity. But it is now, because we're in 70-some countries, it's Master's International University of Divinity, because we're all over the world now. And so what they've done, they don't pay me for this, by the way, and I haven't asked for money. But what they've done is a beautiful thing. Obviously, I'm an alum from there. That's one of the places that I went. It was profound. Look, I've been other places. I went to Liberty, went to other places, went to secular schooling, and all those were, Liberty was great. But I was never more profoundly impacted until I went to Masters. It just, I wish I could say that there was some secret sauce. It's just the people are engaged. They love their students. It's very small, so it's very hands-on. If you are a person who is an independent person, you're disciplined, and you say, I want to do this, I want to study this thing. Let's say, just not for nothing, they're going to give you 10% off on their certificate programs if you tell them Dr. Shawn Michael Greener and the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn. They'll know who I am. If you tell them that, they will give you a 10% discount on certificate programs. Certificate programs are a great way to get started. Why? Because it's not as much to it. It's the syllabus is small. The requirements are much more basic and not as voluminous. The reading and all of that. The requirements on you are a lot less. It's more of a participatory thing, but it's really good. I've read through, just recently, I read through a few of the certificate programs. I've never done one. I've taught at other places, at different Bible colleges. I've taught them, but Masters, their certificate programs are excellent. So if you want to dip your toe in the water, that's how you do it. So you either go to www.mdivs.edu, or you put your little phone or whatever device up there, and the link pops up, boop, press on that, and then you'll go right to the link for more information. Anyway, so from the details we get in 1 Samuel 17, it definitely says that Goliath had a bronze helmet, right? At the start, verse 5. But by the time David slings that stone, which is all the way in verse 49, it says it hits Goliath in the forehead and sinks in to his forehead, meaning the forehead was exposed. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Forehead had to have been exposed. Now, best I can tell, this is how I answered my friend Dennis, my good friend Dennis, is I said, best I can tell from the text, Goliath either lifted his helmet, pushed it back, or took it off when he came closer to mock David. As he's getting closer to the little tiny, he is as small as I thought. This is a little tiny guy. Dude, have you seen me? And I want to direct you, when you listen to What Are the Nephilim, Goliath, Giants, and the Truth, you'll see in that thumbnail a real representation of the size difference. And this is a picture in the Rumble especially, the thumbnail there. I didn't, with YouTube, you just don't know what you can post and what you can't. There are words that I've said on here that you can't say. They will literally demonetize you. They'll deplatform you. And you don't even know it's a bad thing to say. And one of the things, though, is something that they say, well, that's a little sexual, based on a lot of the stuff that makes it on there. I'm like, wow, really? But there was this one particular one, and if you look on Rumble, the thumbnail for What Are the Nephilim, Goliath, Giants, and the Truth, you'll see that there's a woman there. Her arms are, bare, and sort of a desolate area behind them. And in that, I explain how they came to be, right, and what they are. I'm not going to re-explain it here, but that will explain it. But there's a great representation of that, of the size. And he's a boy. He's a boy. He's not this full-grown woman standing next to a Nephilim. He's a boy. He's just a boy. He's just a boy. You don't know no better. Mm-hmm. Quick in chat or in comments, what was that a reference to? Poor imitation? Poor, what is it? Not imitation, impression. Poor impression, but I like them French fried potatoes right, Will. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that was free, by the way. No cost or obligation to you. So it could very well have been that as he gets closer, he goes, what? Are you kidding me? I didn't think he had a Jewish accent. I'm pretty positive he didn't. You gotta be kidding me with this kid. But then there had to have been something in his mind. I don't know if you ever thought of this, but I've always thought of this. Let me give you an example. So I used to coach baseball and basketball. Well, I knew the capabilities of the catchers on every team that we played against. And so I also knew how fast our base runners were. So I'd get a guy on first base. These are young guys. And I would say, as soon as he throws the ball, you run. But then a few times of successful steals, then I would say either to that person or another base runner, I'd say, as soon as the catcher gets ready to throw the ball, he rears back with the ball and starts to throw his arm forward, that's when I want you to run. And they would always be like, huh? Coach, what? That's not... Well, the reason why I did that was because the mental synapse that causes is that's not when they're supposed to run, and then they try to grab the ball back or find a way to throw it harder and further to second base. Usually either goes over, hits the ground, goes over second base, whatever the case may be, but they never made the play, never throw anybody out, ever, 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 ever. And the boys initially would look at me and and I'd say, just humor me. Humor me. It'll be fun. So look at Goliath. Look at David. And it must have been a synapse in his mind. But it wouldn't have been uncommon for an ancient warrior, especially giants like Goliath. He was full of pride. They killed everybody, right? Anybody that got in their path, they were stupid enough to get in their path. It was not uncommon for them to lift their helmets to show their face. Or maybe when taunting or challenging somebody. And David came at him without armor. Remember, David had no armor. He couldn't have carried it anyway. You're going to put it on him. What's he going to do? The armor weighed as much as he did. All he had was a sling and a staff. And a staff is another fancy word for stick. A leather sling and a staff. So Goliath probably didn't see him as a real adversary. He didn't look at him as a serious threat at all. Yes, Goliath did start the battle with his helmet on, but by the time David fired that stone, either his forehead was exposed or the helmet wasn't protecting him properly, for whatever reason. Otherwise, there's no way the stone could have buried itself into his forehead, like Scripture says. However, I'm going to tell you some stuff in a second that's going to blow your mind. So Dennis, if you are listening or you listen on playback, I hope that helps you, brother. Good way to dig in the Word. So bronze helmets back then. I wasn't around then. I'll be 60 in September. I know it's hard to believe. You'd think I'd look at least 80. But in September, I'll be 60. And I can tell you this. I was not alive back then. I'm just confessing to you all that I was not there at the time, the whole Goliath and David thing. I wasn't there. However, I've done a little bit of research in my time. And back then, they were super heavy. And then you figure how big Goliath was and how humongous that helmet had to have been. His shield, how utterly heavy. It took as many as 4 or 5 people just to carry his shield. And in fact, at a certain point, we know that they were so big that they would have little carts and they would push them because they were like, we can't carry this. Their swords were so immense, same thing. They have to have a little cart. And in the time of Saul and David, around the 11th century BC, the most common helmets were bronze, or they had like a leather cap or a combination of it. Had to have been super heavy. Full-face bronze helmets did exist in some cultures, like later Greek warriors. They had a full face. But most Philistine helmets left the forehead, the eyes, and parts of the face exposed. I think could have been for a lot of reasons, but I would think for breathing, vision, and communication. So that's my thinking. So Goliath's helmet, especially being so massive, given that he was a giant, this would have been heavy, and it was likely open-faced or partial. So the forehead would have been a very vulnerable spot, even with the helmet on, unless it had a full visor, which would have been highly unusual for Philistine heavy infantry at the time. Helmets were sometimes tilted back or lifted during taunting. What they would do is they'd go, what do you say there, mister? Is that right? You gonna slay me, eh? You know, that whole deal. Ancient warriors often pushed their helmets back when they were boasting or they were yelling insults, kind of like lifting a visor today to show your face. So Goliath, he was cursing David by his gods. 1 Samuel 17:43. So he would likely have wanted his face visible to show his utter contempt. It fits perfectly that he either exposed his forehead, either intentionally or carelessly, because he underestimated David. Now, I want to talk really briefly about the stone and the sling. We mentioned somebody in chat already, really super smart. Super smart. You never cease to amaze me how smart you are. The stones, part of the reason why is they flew straight, why they were smooth. The other reason why is they didn't stick in the bag. They didn't catch on anything, and they didn't catch on the sling. But I want you to understand this: the stone and the sling, this was a serious weapon, folks. This wasn't a kid's toy. And when I say that, that shocks people because they're like, what? Come on. David wasn't tossing a pebble. Shepherds were expert slingers. They practiced constantly because that might be the difference between life and death. And they went up, everybody was bigger than them. Every adversary was bigger than them. Every animal, all of it. You had to be good. And you had to be good from a distance. This wasn't an up-close deal. A sling stone, doing my archaeological study, there's 2 major works I consulted, but I consulted some others, and when I read this, I couldn't believe it. A sling stone could be about the size of a baseball. And when thrown by a skilled hand, it could hit with the stopping power of a handgun, a 45 ACP. Seriously. I mean, they didn't have them back then, or they would have used it. A 45. That's a thumper. Poof, that hits you, boy. Even if it snibs you, you're like, ooh, bad day, bad day. Wireless hole punch. Leticillin injection. So even if Goliath's forehead was partially covered and there was a small gap, the force of the stone could easily crush bone and embed itself through the exposed shot. And look, biblical language is very specific here, and we have to pay attention. That's why context is everything. 1 Samuel 17:49 says the stone sank into his forehead. Not that it bounced off, not that it struck armor, but it sank into his forehead. Hebrew words used here imply penetration and collapse, meaning direct impact into flesh and bone. Now, so I promised you I would include these, and I'm gonna. And then if you go to Rumble, the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn channel in Rumble, and you join up with our followers, you follow there, you click on the little thumbs up, all that other, and ask for notifications, yada, yada. It doesn't cost you anything to do it. The only way it costs you anything is if you sign up to be a premium Rumble person, and then you just don't have commercials and I don't know what all else. The user experience. I signed up under premium because I wanted to be able to broadcast more than once a week, and I wanted to be able to schedule them out, farther than a day, 24 hours. That was very important to me to be able to do that. So if you sign up for that, the $5 that comes out automatically, whatever payment method you put in, you don't have to do that. You can, that goes to them, not to me, but you can just follow and then click on the little bell. It's easy peasy, by the way. It's so easy. It's such an easy thing. You download the app wherever you're likely to watch it, and that may mean you download the app multiple times. You create an account, you create a username, just like you would anywhere else. Username, and then your password, and you're good to go. And then just tell it to give you notifications. It's easy peasy, super easy. But if you do that and you send me an email at smgreener@gmail.com, I will send you the study guide for this teaching, and I'm going to send you these 2 poems. So I wrote, as you guys know, I write a lot. In fact, I just wrote, my buddies, Jerry and Meyer and one of my other friends are helping me clean this thing up. Some of you know I have a real heart for open spaces and all of that, but there's this conundrum with, I'm living in a house that used to be a giant dune and a tree, right? A giant old tree. And where do the deer go? Where do the bunnies go? Where do the squirrels go? Where does anything go, right? Where does all the wildlife go? And I mean, but here I am at my own porch, right? And so I wrote another poem, The Porch of Broken Woods, or The Porch That Broke the Woods. I don't know which. I mean, it's driving me crazy. I can't, and I've got so much of it I want to, anyway, this has got nothing to do with that. I'm rambling at this point. But the point is, I write a lot. And some of it's real deep and intense. Well, I've written multiple books, and all available. Lulu.com, LULU.com. Search True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn, SHAWN. Michael, normal spelling. Greener as in the grass is always. And the book in hardback is True Word Faith for Life. And actually, one of the photographs on the photograph on the cover is one of my photographs. But this one's been defaced. One of my dear friends is an incredible artist, and she sent me a book to sign. And I kept this one. She put that on there. She drew that, and she put that on there. And I sent her another one and just signed it. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to know all that stuff. But Lulu.com, Dr. Shawn Michael Greener, True Word Faith for Life. You won't regret it. Anyway, so I've written a bunch. And not for nothing, some of it's pretty darn good. Not incredible, but it's pretty darn good. But some of my poems, and I had 120 poems and a novel. And unfortunately the computer baked, the hard drive baked. I didn't have it backed up and it was ruined. And that novel, I think, was probably the best thing I've ever written. I'm trying to recreate it and write it in all the spare time I have, rewrite it. But that's a novel that I really want to do. Anyway, I want to finish it and get it out there. But so I've written a lot of poems and a lot of songs. I write country songs. I write ballads. I write like choir sort of anthems, hymns, and then I write all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so I write a lot of poetry, and I think maybe I have around 150 poems. And so this one, there's two that I did not for this episode, but I had worked on, and I really wanted to share them with you. So this is called. The title of this is One Smooth Stone, a poem for the Valley of Fear. No crown, no sword, no battle cry, just a shepherd boy beneath the wide open sky. The air was thick with fear that day. While grown warriors trembled, David chose to pray. A sling of leather worn and plain, a heart untouched by soldiers' fame. 5 smooth stones from a whispering brook. And one steady breath was all it took. He didn't wear the warrior's steel, but bore a fire no man could feel. Not forged in fire or drilled in camp, but born in fields beneath God's lamp. You come with sword and spear and pride, but I come with the name you defied. He faced the storm no one would chase, with no fear in his stride, just resolve on his face. Well, the giant laughed. Oh, how he roared. A mountain of flesh and bronze adored. But David knew what Goliath missed, that heaven's armies don't shake their fists. They wait for hearts that trust enough to trade man's might for Yahweh's love. And so the stone, released in flight, found the gap and claimed the fight. Not luck, not chance, not boyhood bold, but covenant courage, ancient and old. A promise kept in riverbed stone by one who knew he'd never stand alone. He didn't set his destiny. He fulfilled it quietly, faithfully. No applause, no scripted fame, just obedience in Adonai's name. He picked up what others left behind, a stone of trust, a peace of mind, not to make his name be known, but to lift the name upon the throne. So when giants rise and courage wanes, when fear invades your quiet plains, remember this, you don't need might. You need to stand in truth and fight. Not with anger and not with show, but with the faith that rivers know, smooth and shaped by heaven's hand and flung by those who understand. The battle isn't won by blade or bone, but sometimes by one smooth stone. I hope that you like that. It's different. Now here is the next one. The Shepherd Who Believed. I wrote this in the middle of the night. Around 3:30, I couldn't sleep. Pain had awakened me, and I said, I could do two things. I could sit here and whine, or I can write. The Shepherd Who Believed. In Bethlehem's hush, 'neath Judah's blue sky, a boy watched his flock as the eagles flew high. No crown on his brow, no sword in his hand, yet heaven had marked him to lead all the land. The hills knew his songs. The sheep knew his name. His harp danced with praise. His voice burned with flame. While brothers bore armor and chased their own fame, David bore wonder and God's holy claim. A stream whispered secrets where silence would cling. There he knelt down and chose stones for his sling, not out of bravado, not hunger for might, but trusting that Adonai wins every fight. When all of Saul's men trembled, their courage undone, one boy faced the dark, but not with a gun. He faced the great giant with no shield or mail, but faith like a mountain that could not fail. Who defies the armies of Elion's host? He cried, while the cowardly muttered and boast. With a sling, with a stone, with a shout and a flame, the shadow fell silent at Yahweh's true name. Not in strength nor in numbers did Israel stand, but through one young heart held firm in God's hand. Where others saw danger and stepped back in fear, David saw covenant, faith drawing near. He knew not just God's name, but his heart and his way. And he trusted the promise no fear could betray. So the giant fell still, and the army did flee. And Israel rose from defeat, set free. O shepherd of Judah, anointed and true, your courage still whispers to me and to you. Believe when it's dark and stand when they run, for the Lord fights through those who trust in the Son. So today, I ask you, what stones do you need to pick up? What stones do you need to pick up? Not to throw at people, but to stand in your own calling. But to stand in your own calling. When fear silences everyone else, faith picks up what others leave behind. I know some of you are facing such challenges. Some of you are in the midst of such massive challenges. And your mindset may have been, I'm defeated. I can't win against all this. Don't fall for that. Remember who your God is. Remember who God made you to be. Now, I'm not going to tell you that God doesn't have it for some go through suffering. If that weren't the case, I wouldn't be going through what I'm going through. And many of you wouldn't be going through what you're going through. I know some of your stories. God knows all of your stories. Some of you are facing terminal illness. Some of you are facing abandonment. Some of you are facing loneliness. Some of you are facing crushing grief. Loss that for many is unimaginable. Some of you have lost jobs. Some of you need a home. Some of you need food. Some of you, your marriages are teetering on the precipice of crushing defeat. Focus on God. We have to put our hands to the problem, right? God doesn't just wave pixie dust and there, fixed it. You didn't have to do anything. Some of us have to change behaviors. Some of us, many of us, have hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Huge hurts, habits, and hang-ups. It's very, very easy to focus on that big challenge. Here's the challenge and the choice for us today. What giant stands before you? What giant stands before you mocking the promises of God that God made over your life? Are you like Saul, waiting for some warrior to fix it? Somebody to come along and fix it? What if they don't come? You say, I would be on time for work, but my alarm didn't work. Set 2. So-and-so didn't wake me up. Own it all. Own your challenges. Own your hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Nothing will change until you do that. And then truly place your faith in God. You know, David remembered that faith is a weapon when wielded with obedience. Which are you going to do? Are you going to be Saul, waiting for some man or some woman or something, some job to come along? Or like David, remembering that faith is a weapon that when wielded with obedience is absolutely undefeatable. The true destruction of Israel was avoided, not because of skill or strategy or size. Yes, he was amazing. David was amazing the way he slung that stone with the impact of a 45. No. It wasn't skill, strategy, or size. It was because one shepherd boy believed. He didn't believe when the worship music was playing and it sounded like, oh yeah, I feel the presence of the Lord in the house tonight. No. Nope. He believed when all of the other greats, people with a lot more skill, people with a lot more credentials, people with a lot more size, people with a lot more experience, stood on the sidelines, trembling in fear. One shepherd boy believed. David trusted God without fail when no one else would. He didn't need armor. He didn't need applause. He only needed one thing, God's presence and the confidence that God finishes what he starts. David didn't slay Goliath because he was something special. He slayed Goliath because he remembered who God is and he acted in accordance with that knowledge. What stone do you need to pick up this week? What act of trust have you been avoiding? Step forward. Even if you're the only one standing, step forward. God is already in your valley. God is already in your valley. Yea, though I walk through the valley, the shadow, the valley of death. Through. Walk through your valleys in prayer and confidence and faith. David was not some unbelievable human being that no one else could match. You have in you, today, right now, you have in you what David had. It's time to use it. Thank you for tuning in to the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn, teaching the Bible as it was meant to be understood for a life that truly matters. Join us Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not going to tell you what the message will be, but you don't want to miss it. And that is all I will say about that. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up and the little bell. In the meantime, shalom, shalom, Shabbat, shalom, shalom, aleichem.